Welcome back, dear friends and story lovers. Tonight, we bring you a tale where love is tested, secrets come to light, and fate takes an unexpected turn. Every moment will pull you in deeper, and every choice could change everything. Tell us where you're watching from in the comments, and if this story touches your heart, like, subscribe, share it with someone who believes in true love, and hit the bell so you never miss the next chapter. The champagne flute shattered against the marble floor, crystal fragments mixing with drops of blood that weren't supposed to be there. Victoria Hayes pressed her palm against the bathroom sink, watching crimson spiral down the pristine white porcelain as violin music drifted through the ballroom doors. She should have stayed home. Should have trusted the knot in her stomach that had been tightening all week, since Damen Sterling asked her to accompany him to the Children's Hospital Foundation Gala. But here she stood in the powder room of Seattle's most exclusive hotel, wearing her mother's vintage midnight blue gown, trying to stop her hand from bleeding while the city's elite sipped wine 20 feet away. The cut wasn't deep. Just a nick from the champagne flute she'd gripped too tightly when Senator Morrison mentioned her father's name, Richard Hayes. Even after 15 years, hearing it spoken aloud in these circles made her blood freeze. "Victoria?" Damen's voice carried through the door, concern threading through his usually controlled tone. "Are you all right?" She glanced at her reflection. The theater makeup Emma's friend had applied still held, but her green eyes betrayed the panic clawing at her chest. Just a moment. The irony wasn't lost on her. She'd spent 3 years as Damen's assistant, managing his life with clockwork precision, protecting him from complications he never saw coming. Now she was the complication. The daughter of the man whose embezzlement scandal had nearly destroyed Sterling Technologies 7 years before Damen hired her. She wrapped tissue around her palm and smoothed her dress. When she emerged, Damen stood waiting in the dimly lit hallway, steel blue eyes immediately finding the makeshift bandage. What happened? He stepped closer, and she caught the scent of his cologne mixed with something else. Something metallic. "Clumsy. With the champagne," she said, but his gaze had shifted to his own hands. In the low light, she noticed what she'd missed before, dark stains on his shirt cuffs, hastily concealed beneath his jacket. Their eyes met, and in that moment, Victoria realized they were both hiding something. The question was which secret would destroy them first. "We should go," he said quietly. "The auction is about to begin." As they walked back toward the ballroom, Victoria's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Your father's debt isn't forgotten. Time to pay up." Behind them, unnoticed in the shadows, a hotel security camera recorded everything. The charity auction had raised $2.3 million. But Victoria could barely focus on the numbers she was supposed to be tracking. The anonymous text message burned in her mind as she watched Damen command the room with effortless authority, bidding on art pieces and promising corporate donations with the casual confidence of someone who had never known real fear. She knew that feeling. Once, before her father's arrest, before the FBI seized their house and her mother sold her jewelry to pay legal fees, before Victoria Hayes became someone else entirely. Magnificent evening, wouldn't you say? Catherine Blackwood appeared beside her, like a predator scenting weakness. The real estate heiress wore a gold Valentino gown that probably cost more than Victoria's annual salary, and her smile held the practiced cruelty of someone who had never been denied anything. "It's a wonderful cause," Victoria replied carefully. "Oh yes, the children, so noble." Catherine's laugh was crystalline and cold. "Though I have to admire your dedication to the role. Most assistants wouldn't go to such lengths to secure their position." Victoria's fingers tightened around her clutch. "I'm sorry. The charming backstory, the family tragedy, even the name. Change. Victoria Hayes." Catherine savored each syllable. "Though I suppose Victoria Garrett doesn't have quite the same ring to it, does it?" Right. The blood in Victoria's veins turned to ice. Across the room, Damen was deep in conversation with tech moguls, completely unaware that his assistant's carefully constructed life was crumbling 10 feet away. "What do you want?" Victoria whispered. "Nothing dramatic. It's just for you to understand. Your place." Catherine stepped closer, her perfume cloying and expensive. "Damen needs someone who understands his world. Someone whose father didn't steal $3 million from Sterling Technologies. Someone who won't disappear when the FBI comes knocking again. Victoria's phone buzzed with another message. Ballroom, northeast corner, come alone. You have 5 minutes. Excuse me, Victoria managed. Moving away from Catherine's venomous smile, the northeast corner led to a service hallway she'd noticed during her preparation research. The kind of place hotel staff used to move unseen through the building. Shouldn't go. Every instinct screamed danger. The alternative was watching her new life implode in front of 300 witnesses. The hallway was dim and empty, except for one figure waiting in the shadows. A man in an expensive suit, his face partially obscured by the harsh fluorescent lighting. Hello, Victoria? Or should I say Miss Garrett? She recognized the voice before she saw his face fully. Marcus Webb, her father's former business partner. The man who had walked away from the embezzlement charges while her father went to prison. The man she'd spent 7 years trying to forget. Marcus. Her voice was steadier than she felt. I wondered when you'd surface, but your father kept excellent records, even the ones he thought he'd destroyed. Marcus held up a flash drive. Bank transfers, offshore accounts, shell companies, all of it pointing to Sterling Technologies' current CFO as the architect of the whole scheme. Victoria's breath caught. That's impossible. Damen would never. Not Damen, sweetheart. Jonathan Pierce, his best friend since college. The man who recommended your father for the position he used to steal millions. Marcus smiled, and Victoria saw the predator her father had trusted. The question is, what's it worth to you to make sure Damen never finds out his closest friend destroyed both your families? Through the walls, she could hear applause as the auction concluded. In minutes, Damen would notice her absence. 50,000, Marcus continued. By Monday morning, or I take everything to the FBI, and this time, they'll arrest the right man. Victoria found Damen in his penthouse office at 2 a.m., still wearing his tuxedo, but with his bow tie hanging loose around his neck. The Seattle skyline glittered beyond his windows, but his attention was fixed on security footage playing on his laptop screen. You left the gala without saying goodbye? He said without looking up. She closed the door behind her, her evening gown rustling in the silence. I needed air. Did you find it in service hallway B? His voice was conversational, but Victoria caught the edge beneath it. On his screen, grainy footage showed her walking into the shadows with Marcus Webb, her heart hammered against her ribs. Damen. Jonathan called me an hour ago. Seems someone approached him tonight with some interesting allegations about my CFO. Damen finally looked at her, and his steel blue eyes held no warmth. About shell companies and offshore accounts tied to embezzlement charges from 7 years ago. Victoria sank into the chair across from his desk. The careful distance she'd maintained between her past and present was collapsing, and there was nowhere left to run. Your real name is Victoria Garrett, Damen continued, closing the laptop. Daughter of Richard Garrett, former Sterling Technologies. Employee convicted of embezzling $3.2 million. You changed your name after his arrest and built an entirely new identity. The word came out barely above a whisper. And you've been working for me for 3 years, with access to financial records, personal information, and company secrets. His tone remained eerily calm. Should I assume this was some elaborate revenge scheme? No. Victoria stood abruptly, her composure finally cracking. I needed the job. My mother was drowning in legal debt, and Emma needed college tuition. When I saw the assistant position, I thought, you thought you could infiltrate my company and finish what your father started? My father didn't start anything. The words exploded out of her, 3 years of suppressed anger and grief finally finding voice. He was a patsy, Damen, a convenient scapegoat for someone else's crimes. Damen leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable. Prove it! Victoria pulled Marcus Webb's flash drive from her purse. Jonathan Pierce orchestrated everything. The shell companies, the transfers, all of it. He set up my father to take the fall when the scheme got too big to hide. She placed the drive on his desk like a loaded gun. Your best friend destroyed my family to cover his tracks. And now he's about to do it again, unless I pay Marcus Webb $50,000 by Monday morning. Damen stared at the flash drive. For a long moment, when he looked up, something dangerous flickered in his eyes. Jonathan has been like a brother to me for 15 years. I know. He was the best man at my wedding. He held my hand at Sarah's funeral. Damen's voice grew quiet, deadly. You're lying to me, Victoria? If this is some elaborate con game, then you'll destroy me. She met his gaze steadily, just like everyone else has. The silence stretched. Between them, heavy with unspoken history and the weight of betrayal. Finally, Damen picked up the flash drive. There's something else you need to know, he said, about why I really asked you to the gala tonight. Victoria's blood chilled. What do you mean? I've known who you were for 6 months. Damen's admission hit her like a physical blow. I hired a private investigator when Jonathan started asking questions about you. He thought you were getting too close to sensitive company information. The room spun around her. You knew. I wanted to see how far you'd go to protect your secret, whether you'd betray me the way everyone else eventually does. He stood, moving to the window. Congratulations, Victoria. You passed the test. Her legs gave out, and she sank back into the chair. This was all a game to you. No, Damen turned back to her, and for the first time since she'd known him, his mask had completely fallen away. It stopped being a game the moment I realized I was falling in love with you. Sighed. Thunder rumbled across the Seattle sky, and the first drops of rain began to streak the windows. The data on the flash drive painted a picture of financial manipulation so sophisticated it had taken Marcus Webb 7 years to piece together. Victoria watched Damen's face as he studied bank transfers, corporate documents, and recorded phone calls that proved Jonathan Pierce had systematically looted Sterling Technologies while her father unknowingly processed the paperwork. The Cayman accounts, Damen murmured, tracing transaction histories with his finger. Jonathan recommended those banks, said they offered better offshore investment opportunities. Victoria sat across from his desk, still wearing her gala gown, but feeling stripped bare. My father thought he was helping the company expand internationally. Jonathan fed him false documentation, made him believe every transfer was legitimate, while skimming millions into his own accounts. Damen's voice was granite. The audit trail leads straight back to him. The penthouse felt like a mausoleum, all gleaming surfaces and cold edges. Rain hammered against the windows as Seattle's storm intensified, mirroring the chaos building inside Victoria's chest. There's more, she said quietly. Marcus showed me something else before he gave me the drive. Damen looked up from the laptop screen. Medical records. Hospital payments. Jonathan's been embezzling money to pay for his daughter's cancer treatments. He's desperate, Damen. Desperate people do terrible things. Something flickered across Damen's features. Emma's treatments. You know about his daughter? I've been covering her medical expenses for 2 years. Damen closed the laptop. Jonathan told me his insurance wasn't sufficient. I never questioned why a man with his wealth would need financial help. Victoria felt the pieces clicking together. Because he spent everything trying to hide what he'd stolen. And when that ran out, he came to you. While letting your father rot in prison for crimes he didn't commit. The rage in Damen's voice should have been satisfying, but Victoria felt only hollow sadness. Another family destroyed by Jonathan's selfishness. Another father who would never get to see his daughter grow up. What are we going to do? She asked. Before Damen could answer, his phone rang. The caller ID showed Jonathan's name. Put it on speaker, Victoria whispered. Damen answered without greeting. It's late, Jonathan. Thank God you're awake. Jonathan's voice crackled through the speaker, tight with panic. Listen, I need to talk to you about your assistant. There are some things you need to know about her background. Victoria's hands clenched in her lap, such as Damen's tone remained neutral. She's not who she claims to be. Her real name is Victoria Garrett. Her father embezzled millions from Sterling Technologies 7 years ago. I see. Damen, she's been using you, playing some kind of long game to get revenge for her father's arrest. Jonathan's desperation was palpable. You have to fire her immediately, maybe even press charges. That's interesting advice coming from you. Silence stretched across the line. What do you mean? Jonathan's voice had changed, becoming wary. I mean, the man who actually embezzled those millions probably shouldn't be giving me advice about corporate security. Victoria heard Jonathan's sharp intake of breath through the speaker. Damen, I don't know what she's told you, but she didn't tell me anything, Jonathan. Marcus Webb did, along with 7 years' worth of evidence proving you framed Richard Garrett for your crimes. The line went dead. Victoria stared at the phone, her heart pounding. He's going to run. No. Damen was already reaching for his jacket. He's going to try to destroy the evidence, probably us along with it. Damen, he's dangerous. If he's killed before, what are you talking about? Victoria met his eyes. The blood on your shirt cuffs at the gala wasn't yours, was it? Damen's silence was answer enough. Marcus Webb is dead, he said finally. I found his body in the hotel parking garage after you disappeared. Someone used a knife, made it look like a robbery. Victoria's world tilted. Jonathan knew about the meeting. Could have followed Marcus, waited for him to leave, which means you're the only person left who can testify about what Marcus discovered. Damen moved to his safe, pulling out a gun Victoria didn't know he owned. And that makes you a target. Outside, lightning split the sky, and somewhere in the city, Jonathan Pierce was making his own preparations for the storm ahead. The confrontation came at dawn in the Sterling Technologies building, 40 floors above a city still sleeping off Saturday night's indulgences. Victoria stood beside Damen in his executive conference room, watching Jonathan Pierce walk through. The glass doors with the measured calm of a man who had already accepted his fate. He looked older than his 42 years, gray threading through his dark hair and deep lines carved around his eyes. The weight of 7 years' worth of lies had aged him in ways money couldn't repair. You should have let sleeping dogs lie, Jonathan said, settling into a chair across from them. He placed a manila folder on the polished table. Both of you, you let my father lie in his grave thinking he was a criminal? Victoria's voice was steady, but her hands trembled with suppressed fury. Your father was dying anyway. Cancer, stage 4. The doctors gave him 6 months. Jonathan opened the folder, revealing medical records and prison documents. I gave his family a settlement. Clean money. More than he ever would have made working for Damen. Blood money, Damen said quietly. Paid for with stolen funds. Paid for with money I earned building this company. Jonathan's composure cracked. Do you know what it's like watching your daughter waste away while you have millions in accounts you can't touch? Emma was 8 when they diagnosed her. Hard. 8 years old, and the treatments that could save her weren't covered by insurance. Victoria felt the familiar ache in her chest. The same desperation that had driven her to change her name and build a new life. The same love that made people do terrible things. So you framed my father. I created an opportunity for everyone to walk away whole. Jonathan's eyes were hollow. Richard got a reduced sentence in minimum security. Your family got financial security. Emma got her treatments. Everyone won, except my father died believing he was a thief. Your father died knowing his family was provided for. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Victoria understood then that Jonathan Pierce wasn't a monster. He was something worse, a father who had sold his soul to save his child and convinced himself it was noble. Where does this end, Jonathan? Damen asked. With you letting me disappear? Emma's in remission, but she'll need monitoring for years. I have enough hidden away to take care of her medical expenses for life. Jonathan closed the folder. In exchange, I'll sign a confession exonerating Richard Garrett and return the remaining stolen funds. And if we refuse? Jonathan smiled, and Victoria saw the predator beneath the father's mask. Then you'll never find Emma's body. The words hit Victoria like ice water. I picked her up from her dorm room last night. Told her there was a family emergency. Jonathan's voice remained conversational. She's safe for now. But if the FBI comes for me, if I go to prison, no one will ever find where I've hidden her. Damen was on his feet instantly, the gun in his hand. You bastard. Careful, Damen. Pull that trigger, and Emma Hayes dies alone and afraid. Victoria felt the world narrow to a single point of clarity. Her sister. 21 years old, brilliant and kind and completely innocent of the sins their father had been. Accused of the only family she had left. Let her go, Jonathan. Take me instead. Victoria, no. Damen's voice cut through her resolve. She's right, Jonathan said. You're the one with the testimony that could destroy me, much cleaner to eliminate. The source, then keep running from the consequences. Victoria moved toward Jonathan, each step feeling like walking underwater. Where is she? Somewhere safe. Somewhere you'll join her if you try anything heroic. Jonathan stood, his hand moving to his jacket. But first, you're going to call the FBI and tell them you lied about the evidence, that you made everything up for revenge. She's not calling anyone. Damen raised the gun, then Emma dies. Victoria closed her eyes, seeing her sister's face. Emma laughing at something ridiculous. On television. Emma bringing her coffee during late study sessions. Emma telling her to take chances, to live a little, to stop protecting everyone else at the expense of her own happiness. When she opened her eyes, Victoria knew what she had to do. I'll make the call, she said. But I want to see Emma first. Proof she's alive. Jonathan pulled out his phone, scrolled to a video, and turned the screen toward them. Emma sat tied to a chair in what looked like a warehouse, unconscious but breathing. Satisfied, Victoria nodded, then looked at Damen. In his eyes, she saw everything she'd never had the courage to say. 3 years of careful, professional distance. One night of discovering they were both broken in compatible ways. The possibility of love built on truth instead of secrets. I'm sorry, she whispered. Then she lunged forward, grabbing Jonathan's gun hand and twisting hard to the right. The weapon discharged into the ceiling, raining plaster down on them as they struggled. Damen moved toward them, but Victoria shouted without releasing her grip on Jonathan. The warehouse. Find Emma. Jonathan was stronger than she'd expected, desperation giving him inhuman strength. They crashed into the conference table, then the floor. Rolling and fighting for control of the weapon, Victoria felt the gun barrel press against her ribs just as Damen's shot echoed through the room. Jonathan, Pierce died instantly, his finger tightening on the trigger in a final reflex that sent a bullet through Victoria's chest. She hit the floor hard. Her mother's vintage gown spreading around her like spilled ink. Above her, the Seattle sky was turning pink with dawn. Light. Victoria. Damen was beside her, pressing his hands against the spreading crimson stain. Stay with me. Stay with me. She tried to speak, but blood filled her mouth. The irony wasn't lost on her. She'd spent 3 years protecting Damen from complications. And in the end, she'd become the biggest complication of all. Emma, she managed. To whisper, we'll find her. I promise. Victoria smiled, tasting copper. Tell her I kept my promise. What promise? That I'd stop protecting everyone else. Her voice was getting weaker. Take a chance on something amazing. The last thing she saw before the darkness claimed her was Damen's face. His steel blue eyes filled with tears for the woman who had saved him by destroying herself. 3 weeks later, Emma Hayes stood beside her sister's grave in a small cemetery. Outside Seattle, the headstone read, Victoria Hayes' beloved sister. She chose love over fear. Damen appeared beside her, placing white roses on the fresh earth. Did you find her father? Emma asked. The prison warden confirmed Richard Garrett. Died believing he was innocent. Someone had been sending him newspaper clippings about corporate fraud cases, showing him how the real criminals operated. Damen's voice was quiet. Victoria had been mailing them anonymously for 3 years. Emma wiped her eyes. Never gave up on him. She never gave up on anyone. They stood in silence as the Seattle rain began to fall, washing the world clean for those still living with the consequences of love and loss. In his final confession, found among Jonathan Pierce's papers, he wrote, some scenes can't be undone, only paid for. Victoria Garrett was braver than all of us. And